half a mile from here, on the other side of that plant, is where they detected apparently up to 1,000 times increased levels.
And so just to clarify, the EPA didn't test for heavy metals when they were here?
They only tested for the HF and then they left. They said, we've tested, we didn't detect this, and they left.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
This is Tina-Desiree Berg. I am reporting for Status Coup here at Moss Landing, which is in the Monterey Bay area of California. We are very close to Salinas, which is a big farm area. That's where a lot of the lettuce, artichokes, broccoli, all kinds of vegetables are grown, not only for California, but for big chunks of the United States. Right behind me, you will see what looks like a nuclear power plant facility. What it actually is a lithium battery storage facility. It caught on fire earlier this week. All the batteries pretty much burnt. I think there was about 100,000 batteries in that facility. So this is Brian. This is Matthew. We're going to be talking with them today. They're going to walk us through some of the chain of events of how we got here, what's going on currently, and just the state of affairs. But a lot of people are becoming very ill, and that's obviously a point of contention. So, Brian, first with you, can you walk us through the timeline of how this happened and where we are now?
I now live in Prunedale, which is about 8 miles east of the plant. Thursday the 16th, I think it was, we saw reports at our house. My wife and were with our 7-year-old son. We saw reports showing that this power plant had caught on fire. For years, since the 50s, it was an oil-fired power plant that was shut down sometime in the late 90s or the early aughts when I was not living here. There are all these power lines emanating from this location right here on the side of the bay that then go out all across the state. So apparently a decision was made in the mid-teens to put in solar battery backup capabilities for all of the solar that's going into California as a way to store that energy and then distribute it at night. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So on Thursday evening, we saw reports. We went out on our back balcony. We saw the fire from our home. And on Friday morning, we knew that the wind was going to shift towards us away from Watsonville to our north. And we were fortunate. We had the ability, and so we decided we were going to leave. We went to San Francisco. On Saturday morning, my wife started a Facebook group, and by the end of the day, there were 1,000 people on it. By the end of Sunday, there were 2,000 people on it. One of those people, a woman named Tanya Rivera, reached out and said that she wanted to get people together at the Prunedale Grange to try and have people talk about what's happening. I have a background, among other things, in facilitation, so I offered to facilitate that meeting. We had about 200 people in attendance in the hall. Several hundred more were online. We, in that meeting, attempted to shift people immediately towards looking at what had happened and trying to understand it and get organized so that our community could immediately start to take action in the face of what we assumed was going to be a certain amount of disinformation by the corporation, which has $1 billion investment here. And we, at that time, didn't know the role that authorities would be able to play in helping our community. We also realized that we were not hearing a lot from the authorities. Glenn Church, who's the district supervisor for this area, did immediately get up. He was here on site the night of the fire broke out, and it was covered extensively by local media for several days. He said that there was a real problem here. Very quickly, Dawn Addis, who's the assemblywoman for part of this district, coming up towards Carmel, she also came up and immediately got involved in saying that there's a problem here and this plant has created a huge environmental potential disaster. But that was by and large it. Things started kind of going radio silent over the past week and a half otherwise. Some local politicians and some folks who work in Sacramento weighed in. And unless they're doing other things that we're not hearing about, it was kind of a one and done. The EPA showed up immediately. There was a press conference, I think, on Saturday or Sunday, perhaps, maybe Monday at the latest. A woman from the EPA said that they tested for a chemical, I think it's hexafluorine.
Yeah.
You guys can confirm if that's it. They said that they'd taken air samples at, I think it was 7 locations around the plant, and they'd found no evidence that had occurred, or that it had been, what they said has been fully destroyed in the fire, and that it had not caused a problem. And then they packed up and left town. But as the reports kept coming out of people having medical issues, it was clear there was something going on in our environment. And additionally, people started weighing in with their understanding, which is far greater than mine, of these chemicals and what they are. As I like to say, there's one gentleman who I call a big brain guy, and he put up something on one of the sites that said that his back of napkin calculations, based upon the chemistry of these batteries and the count of 100,000 batteries that have been provided by the company, was that upwards of 5,000 tons of toxic chemicals have gone into the air.
I want to bring Matthew into the conversation. So, Matthew, you are a hobby photographer. You showed me some of your great shots earlier today. You've been out here photographing wildlife, beautiful landscape around here. But you also have been involved in collecting samples and going into areas where others have not been willing to go and grabbing samples from those areas. Talk us a little bit through about the work you're doing in this.
Well, you know, my thing is primarily the wildlife and just
make sure you hold it up.
Observing the wildlife.
Okay.
And trying to make sure that we can observe any decline that might be happening. However, I'm not a biologist, so I'm not entirely familiar with migration patterns and all that. My main thing is just to be in nature, observe. I got it. Okay. And basically where this came from, I had been tracking 2 bobcats, and I tracked them directly to a pond where they were obviously drinking. I also found salamanders, a protected species, within a foot of the water. I've got videos on that and videos of tracking, and this is a sample of that water. It had a iridescent sheen on top, as if it had some sort of chemicals or oils, pesticides, whatever it might be. We'll find out. But you know, the danger involved here, like Brian was saying with the hydrofluorine, it's you know, the EPA came out and they may have tested it, but at what level did they test it? Because it's lighter than air. Did they fly a drone up 1,200 feet and test the air during the fire? Because the hydrofluorine burns up within the first day or 2.
Oh, it does. Okay.
So it's not, you know, that's an initial release. And if anybody can just hop online and study it and find out that oftentimes they've observed an aerosol with that HF. Okay. Now, we have a marine layer because this is a coastal valley. Right. That marine layer goes down the valley. I'm not going to get too specific there because I don't want to panic anybody, but when you have these particulates of HF mixing with the particulates of H2O that's in the atmosphere, that's going to get carried out, and it's going to come down with condensation and dew. You know, so it's not a matter of just testing the immediate vicinity.
It's everything.
And then we have the marine layer that recedes right around 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's kind of a double whammy for the people that live right off the other side of the Elkhorn Slough Reserve, you know, and the reserve itself. So my main thing is just to observe the wildlife, you know, see if there is a decline, what's missing, you know, what's going on. And I'm seeing a lack of insects. There haven't been any pelicans since the fire, and I was actually told that by a local employee. I already noticed that because that's one of the most common birds that I'm capturing.
And if folks are interested and you want to track what's going on, you can go to the Facebook group. The primary one that we've been working with, that my wife set up, is Moss Landing Power Plant / Vistra, V-I-S-T-R-A, symptoms. And people can go there and see what people have been reporting. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of entries already. There have been, as far as we know, 2 efforts to test. There's a third that we think is underway up in Santa Cruz County, but there have been 2 that have happened that we're aware of. The first was San Jose State University.
Right. Also, can you explain what a baseline is? Because I know they found one.
By baseline, it just means what's normally occurring in the environment. Okay? And we don't know what that is, right? People with bigger brains than us, than me. Not necessarily you, Tina, but me. We'll figure that out. My job's different. It's not to be an expert on this stuff. It's to make sure I'm getting people together and trying to communicate and trying to get us coordinated as a community. That's what I do. But there are 2 tests that I'm aware of. The first is was done by San Jose State University, which is part of this amazing facility here with all of these buildings, which is all related to oceanography and to the aquarium, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the MBARI, Monterey Bay Area Research Institute. That's all here, right here at Moss Landing. Yeah. So the testing that was done done by San Jose State University. They've been going into the Elkhorn Estuary, which we call the slough here, for several years. And they've been testing the soils back in there. The estuary runs into this little harbor here, which is where our fishing fleet is. The estuary is the 2nd largest natural estuary, as far as I know, on the West Coast. It stretches back through the hills here. It goes way back. So they have been doing testing on the soils, and I think it was early last week, they announced that they had results of testing they did immediately after the event. And they showed elevated heavy metals up to 1,000 times baseline. They have baseline because they've been testing. Yeah. So right half a mile from here, on the other side of that plant, is where they detected apparently up to 1,000 times increased levels.
And so just to clarify, the EPA didn't test for heavy metals when they were here?
They only tested for the HF and then they left. They said, we've tested, we didn't detect this, and they left. Why the EPA didn't say there are other things that might have come out of this plant, I can't speculate. But they said there's no HF, and HF is apparently very caustic and dangerous. Very small quantities can kill. So I understand why they tested for that. I'm not sure why they didn't test for anything else, and why they said, we're done here. We're lucky. We have the resources. We were able to leave. We're currently living in an Airbnb over on the Monterey Peninsula because we can, and we don't want to be here. My wife's not going to let me come home without taking a shower first now that we're out here, because the wind's blowing, this stuff, if it's in the environment, is here. So we did that. But the tragedy is that most people here can't do that.
But, you know, looking at the patterns of everything, we've had reports of people losing bees on 156.
Yeah, I saw that report. Do you know anything about that? Can you talk about that?
I've requested more information from other beekeepers, and nobody's really saying much. I haven't heard anything from veterinarians. Right. That would definitely be something
catastrophic. So hang on, let me talk about that for a second. So for folks that don't know, the beekeepers up here this would be catastrophic. We have been having a loss of the bee population just naturally with just environmental degradation in the area. So they have been keeping bees for the farmland, because without the bees, you don't have pollination, you don't have crops. So losing any part of this bee population would be absolutely devastating for this area.
Yeah, the ecosystem, I mean, if you don't have that pollination, you don't have, I mean, no pollination means no insects, means no food for the birds, means no more food for more insects, and it just kind of snowballs.
Yeah.
A declining snowball.
Yeah.
You know.
So Brian has to go here in a second. I wanted to talk. I got you. I want to talk with you about FTI Consulting, though. First, we touched on this a little bit, but we didn't get into nuts and bolts of this. So FTI Consulting is a corporation that has many. They're a consulting group that people bring in to do PR, spin doctor work, things of this nature. Environmental crisis management, messaging. Yeah. So propaganda, if you will. They have a lot of fossil fuel clients. That is their sort of area of expertise. So FTI Consulting came in, they set up this sort of phony looking website that was quote unquote designed to put out information, but it was really a PR website designed to make Vistra look okay and to, you know, sort of assuage people's fears without really giving any transparent or honest information. So do you tell us a little bit about what you've discovered about FTI Consulting in your activism? I
just have to let you know, I don't know a lot about it.
Okay.
You know, all I can say is that this is a world we live in. When a big corporation has a big problem, they're going to engage a firm like this to try and manage the fallout, both figuratively and literally, right? So, literally. You know, the community is very concerned that they're monitoring what people are writing and saying. There's a lot of fear, frankly, in the community about that possibility. You know, Something I try to do during this is to have a human being attached to what we're trying to do. My colleagues are working as hard or harder than I am, but somebody's got to be a person, not just info at. Somebody has to be present to show that they're real people trying to understand what's going on and find solutions and get people engaged. And right now I'm playing that role. I don't want to, because on the other side is this huge corporation with all this money who's saying nothing. And I believe that as a community, if we're going to be at the table when the decisions made about what to do with this plant, we need to come together. And all of our activities, the 6 of us with a couple of folks helping us, are designed to try and, number one, make sure, and we call ourselves Never Again Moss Landing, and we have a website that's still being populated, neveragainmosslanding.org. We're not a 501c3, we're not an LLC, we're just people. If these people show this community that they're willing to take the steps necessary, and the way I describe it is nuclear facility level protocols, because in 60 plus years there's been one nuclear accident in this country. Regardless of what you think about nuclear power, there's been one accident. Here we've had 3 in 3 years. So whatever the protocols are, they're inadequate. And this community has to have a say in what those protocols are, and they need to be accountable to what those protocols are, which I don't think they were the first time around. And at the end of the day, that needs to stop this from happening. Otherwise, the tech is broken. That's what we need help with. And we need to make sure it's done not just here, but everywhere.
Yeah, see, the HF has an immediate effect on anybody that it touches. It gets into your lungs, it's going to burn your lungs, it'll burn the back of your throat. So you have a lot of people that are complaining about having throat problems. You can hear mine right now. That's because I spent several hours in the reserve yesterday hunting this down. But you have your nickel, you've got your cobalt, and you've got your manganese. Those are the ones that are going to seep into the ground and eventually make it into the water table. So that's the stuff that you can test for right now. You're not going to be able to find anything with HF because that's a gas. You're not looking at particles at that point.
No, it's too late, yeah.
So in order to really test for that, they needed to have some sort of sensors already set up so that they knew, yes, there was an HF
Which
release during the fire. No, not well. I couldn't attest to that.
Okay.
They might.
What is next steps for you then? So are you going to continue to monitor the wildlife, maybe get more samples? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just observe, and if I see something strange like with this pond, then I'll see if I can get somebody to help me get it tested, and because I don't really have the resources to do much. I get out there because I have a spine injury, and walking is the best thing I can do. And then I'm one of those people where I just feel like I have to be doing something, so I grab a camera and take it with me.
Right.
So hopefully everything turns out, and we don't know how bad it is or how good it is, but we can assume that we're not being told the truth.
The company is not talking. We know that they've engaged, from reporting that I've read and others have read, they've engaged a PR firm that works from a playbook to help large corporations with environmental exposures and problems to address how to manage that with the public, with authorities. They've been engaged in this effort to
It's FTI Consulting?
FTI Consulting, yeah. They're a big corporation, of course. Vistra last year, according to published reports, was the largest polluter in the United States, individual utility polluter in the United States.
Oh, wow.
But they run a massive amount of power in a variety of ways, so it kind of goes with the territory. But they have a huge amount. They're a Texas company with a $40 billion company, from what I've read. And, this is a $1 billion plant. They're trying, obviously, to protect their investment, but they're not communicating. And that's not a good way to be dealing with this community. And for any authorities that are listening, I'm sorry about that. They need to get involved and start helping this community understand better what's going on. The fact that we have to do it on our own is pretty appalling, right? So the people here want green power, but not if it does this.